What's up, everybody? We're going to start a brand new series today around Pokemon investment. In this first episode, I'm going to show you how we go back over 30 years and see what is upwards of thousands of percentages of returns. We're going to try to dig into what is the reasons for this. What should you take into consideration if you're thinking about investing in Pokemon? Always remember, I'm just sharing my perspective, most of which I did for me. This research I'm about to share with you, all the opinions that I'm also going to try to explain as clearly as I can, these were things I came up with through my own discovery for how I wanted to invest. And when I looked out into at least the sphere within YouTube and how they were looking at investment in Pokemon, nobody really covered this level of detail, and they sure didn't share with you how do you look at all the sets over time and how was the ROI or the return on investment for these sets as you look at this and over the course of years. So I think it's important for you at least to have that as ammunition in your back pocket. I'm happy to share all this research and information with you so that you can make informed decisions on your financial investment. So let's jump in. Before we jump in, smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and leave a comment below. It really helps the channel out, and it's completely free to you. So if you take a look at Pokemon investing, you have a couple of sources you can look at, and you never want to look at just one, of course. You want to look at more than one. If you look at one, especially when people are trying to manipulate the market, it's going to give a skewed perspective. So definitely look at more than one. I've looked so far at TCG Player. Most of you know exactly what TCG Player is. It's one of the top websites for anything around card sales, especially around singles, but also even booster boxes and cases. And so anytime you go into a product like this one we see here, you're going to see essentially what that sold with a maximum of about 1 year. So if we look at this example here, we have Team Up, a Team Up booster box, which was from the Sun and Moon era. That came out, which I'll talk about in a little bit, some years ago. And you kind of venture from its original price here in February of 2022, and then you scoot up to now and you're looking at a pretty large increase. So we went from, in this case, of $761 all the way up to a little bit over $1,000 with current listings sitting at $2,000 and $3,000 as a range. So this gives you a good piece of information, but again, not everything. I use eBay as well. And so if we look at eBay, you can see what was sold. Here I'm using the Seller Hub on eBay. If you don't have one, all you need is an eBay account. You don't need to have anything else. And you can go into the Seller Hub, and then you can start to search for specific products and look at that trend over time. And you just got to be careful because obviously what you search for may bring back, different results, and you got to be careful with your keywords. So here, they're selling packs up to 36 packs, which is kind of a booster box, but not exactly what I'm looking at. And so you want to look at this and make sure that you're seeing the right thing, but you can see those sorted by date and of course start to filter your data. I also look at some other places such as the price chart. And this kind of gives you a little bit of an aggregation. It looks like it's highly swayed by eBay. I'm not sure if it does take in other data sources, but at least it gives you the charting over the course of time. And it's a good way to also see what some of those prices have been historically. So it is a good way to get started. But then for me, when I look at this, and I'll show you now this, and what we have here is something I'm putting together because I wanted to quantify this for myself. Did I buy into FOMO? Maybe not. It depends because I've bought a lot of product in the past 3 months. And I would say my investment in Pokemon sealed product, which is primarily where I would recommend that we focus at least today's conversation, is going to be quite high. Now, I'm a collector as well. I like to collect. I like to play. I like to trade. I like to have and build content around openings. And those are more just for fun. When you get into sealed investments, that is something that I'm not necessarily playing with. I plan to buy and hold. And when you think about the buy and hold, you always want to consider time frame, right? So if you look at that over time, you're going to see very quickly that over the horizon, at least when looking at Pokemon sealed product, and I'm really focused mostly on booster boxes at this time. There's 10s and UPCs or ultra premium collections, and they definitely have a great win if you can buy in at the right time and hold that. And it's something that I'll dabble in a little bit. I have a couple of Charizard UPCs, for example. I would love to get some 25th anniversaries, but I'm not really knocking down doors to do that. I would rather just have booster boxes and hold those, booster cases really, and hold those over time. And so I wanted to put together some data. I wanted to know, show me every set. Show me when that set was released. What was the original MSRP on the release day? What is the last price sold and where? Then, knowing that, and of course looking at more than one source, what was then the ROI on that and over how many years? Mighty Mike did a great episode recently. He talked about some of the perspectives of investment, and I like the way he framed it, and I'll reuse some of his words here very loosely. But you know, we look at the stock market, which is where most of us invest. I have a 401k. We invest in the stocks. We do all the traditional things for our retirement here in this household. And you could say, okay, well, the S&P 500 will run between 6 and 10% year over year. Let's call it 7. We look at that for 10 years. It takes you 10 years to double your money. So if you invest $100,000 at 7% return year over year, compounding interest and all those fun financial topics, you reach $200,000 in about 10 years. Okay, not bad. And let's turn our viewpoint to a Pokemon and say, well, what does Pokemon look like? And so if we look at that from a Pokemon perspective, let's look at that with the latest sets. And so if we look at every set, working our way backwards from most current to some of the oldest ones. Now, I haven't filled in everything completely. It's taking me some time, as you can imagine, to put this together, and I just kind of do it in my free time. If we take a look at this from a Pokemon and sealed product investment perspective, how does that compare to the S&P 500 and other things that you might do on typical investments? And the answer is, it's not even close. And I mean not even close. Let's just take a look at this holistically from now until the first base set was released, and let's just talk about what we see here from a factual perspective. And if we think that's wrong, I welcome your feedback. I could very well be wrong on some of this. I am new to Pokemon, but this isn't rocket science. Maybe I have a few, numbers off on original booster box price, or maybe I put in the price of last sold for a first edition and it was not a first edition. Okay, fair enough. But the point is the same. And so let's look at this. So if we take a look at Silver Tempest, and by the way, I'm not including collection sets. So that's your Crown Zenith, 25th anniversary, Pokemon Go. They don't make booster boxes for that. So you can't buy a case of booster boxes from Pokemon for those sets. So I took those out of the picture for now, so we can focus just completely on one type of product across time. That's the best way to look at that. So if we look at Silver Tempest, MSRP was somewhere around $99 when it comes out, which is for most of the Sword and Shield, era. And that's for the typical person buying it, here on Amazon, or that's like we paid something like that around Christmas as well. It's now selling for $131.21 on TCG Player. Okay. Now let's look at that in return. Well, if you would have bought one box and then sold it, you're making 33% or $32.21 per booster box. Not great. Not something that I would try to flip and sell. It doesn't make any sense. But this just came out in November of 2022. We're not even 6 months in, and we've already made 33% return. 33% return. Oh, all right. Let's keep going. Perhaps that's too new, and you say, well, that's just because right now things are a little bit crazy. Okay, fair enough. Let's take a look at some older sets. So as we move up, we know Evolving Skies is one of the craziest ones at the moment, as of the time of this recording. So sure enough, that's at 247%. You buy a booster box at $99 when it came out, which was in August of 21, $99, and now you can make $244 per booster box. Well, that's a pretty good return. How much is that? 247%. So how long would it take you to get 247% return on an S&P 500? Do the math. So let's keep going. Let's maybe just jump up to the beginning of Sword and Shield. All right, so that's the beginning of the Sword and Shield era. Released in February of 2020. Again, I'm just rounding the MSRP prices, and I kind of generically went lower, assuming that they sold for, maybe $89 or $79 or $69, 20 years ago. I don't know the exact MSRP prices because nobody can give me sales data that's 20 years old, but we'll just give or take, 20 or 30 bucks if you would. So here, we're selling those right now on TCG Player for $276.64, which gives you 179% return. How long does that take? Years. Three. So in 3 years, we've got 179% return. So the lowest one in Sword and Shield at the moment is Battle Styles. I don't think anybody here is surprised. But even Battle Styles has went up 9% in a year. Better than most stocks. So if you look at that, it's quite a telling picture. But all this is within 3 years. If you start at Sword and Shield base and then you look up to date with Scarlet and Violet about to come out, it's too soon. And any investor is typically going to be talking about decades, right? Many years, because you're not an investor if you're flipping and selling product within the same year. You're a hustler. So if you're an investor, you're talking about holding position or, changing when you can invest and make more in another area, not flipping and selling, trying to make 20 bucks. That's not investing, that's hustling. Let's go back a little bit further. Let's look at Sun and Moon. These are two sets that I've bought into, that is Team Up and I believe it was Unified Minds. I could be wrong between that or Broken Bonds, I forget which one. But I bought into those because we are obviously not printing product anymore for Sun and Moon. So if you look at, let's just take Cosmic Eclipse, one of the last Sun and Moon, or the last Sun and Moon set that was released in November of 2019. Again, generically given a $99 sales price on the original MSRP. It's now selling for $700. That's a 600% return. And you can see if you look up here within the Sun and Moon section of this financial mapping, 607 is not the lowest, but it's not the highest either. It's near the top 2 or 3, it looks like. Why is that so much more money? Now, there's many reasons why. The set, how good it is, the cards. But one of the main things we have to take into consideration with Pokemon, and really anything that we deem in human society as valuable, is we will pay for what we deem to be valuable. And one of the really interesting perspectives of this is stocks. It really abstracts you away from what you're investing in. You may buy stocks in a specific company because you believe in that company, but most people buy, through hedge funds and other means that is just a distributed set of stocks, like the S&P 500, for example. And so you're really abstracted away. You're not buying into something. You're just trying to buy into a belief of value in the future. And that's exactly what we're doing here as well. And we can definitely say, when we talk about Pokemon, now this is a physical product that you would have to hold somewhere and keep safe, but it's a luxury. If we look at this and say, what's the difference? The difference is the product is limited. The belief in Pokemon being something valuable is still there. When their products stop being printed, it immediately becomes a topic of scarcity and limited supply. So when supply is limited and demand is high, what happens? The price goes up. And so the moment you start talking about what products are in print versus out of print, you then start to change very quickly the perspective of how much something will be worth. You add in then on top of that the layers of how good the set is, maybe how playable the cards might be, especially if you still talk about expanded TCG games where you get to play older cards and older decks. What are some of the rarities in that? And of course, the individual card prices and the artworks. You layer in all of these things on top of that, you start to have a pretty good picture about where Pokemon will be. So let's take this and let's look at the average amount of money across Sun and Moon series that you get on return across all the sets. So the average is about $329.12. All right, average return percentage wise is 332%. Well, how long will it take me to get that much? Well, the oldest one is 6 years. Now, obviously, having one booster box and selling that one booster box 6 years later will not make you rich. But if you're investing slowly in active current stock of Pokemon cards that you think are good sets or have good arts, or it's going to be something very playable now and in the future, and you buy that a little bit over time and you hold that for 6 years, can you make a potential of 300%? Maybe. The trajectory here on Sword and Shield looks pretty good. Let's do the same thing. So Sword and Shield average return is about $73, and average percent across Sword and Shield is about 74%. That's pretty good. Again, we're talking about one booster box here. So when I give you these prices and the numbers, this is looking at one booster box per set. I want to break it down to the very basic of what the product is that we're talking about here. And that's in year one. So a 74% return in year one or less, depending on which set you're talking about. If we look then further back and we go, well, let's talk about XY series. Go back to XY. You start to hit Flashfire. Let's look at that. Flashfire sitting at, again, $99. I'm assuming somewhere around that as MSRP. Last sold at $2,500 on eBay on the 1st of January this year. And that gives you a 2,425% return. How long did it take to get there? 8 years. S&P 500 is not going to do that. I can guarantee you that. You can look back for decades and see that S&P 500 does not give you those kind of returns. Now, that's one of the best ones, actually is the best one in the X and Y series. So let's be fair. Let's go down to maybe one of the lowest ones. Steam Siege, I think we can all agree, is probably the worst one in XY, right? I've heard lots of complaints. I've never opened it myself, but lots of complaints. I think there was only a Rainbow Charizard in that one. 6 years, you still get 161% return. The worst set in X and Y, and you get 161% return in 6 years. So you can equate that to Battle Styles. So you take Battle Styles 6 years later, and it still may be the worst set in Sword and Shield, but it's still going to be better than probably Steam Siege ever was. One of the other things that you have to take into consideration here, and I've kind of alluded to it, but if you scroll to the right on this, now you're going to see number of secret cards, number of holo foils, number of unknowns, shinies, Rotom cards. There were just a couple of things that were happening depending on what set you talk about in terms of some of the different types. You even have here Galarian galleries, we have trainer galleries. And so when you look at that and you start to look at the numbers, but if we look at trainer gallery, which is this column, plus some of the secret cards, which is this column, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. We go from 2, 3, and by the way, this is sitting at, again, the X and Y series. We go from 2, 3, 1, 5. That's how many secret cards you had in the set. Then you start to move it to Sun and Moon, and then we're moving up into the teens. And then you move down into Sword and Shield. And not only do you get secret cards that are now in 20s and 30s, but now you can add on to that, we have trainer galleries. So if you look at here, the first introduction of the trainer galleries looks like was Brilliant Stars. I could be wrong there. But based on the data that I've collected so far, it looks like the trainer gallery started to be introduced around Brilliant Stars. So now we have a whole new component for the first time being added to the sets, which is still, in this case, especially Brilliant Stars, a current set. That if you fast forward 6 years later, and you ask yourself, how good would this be? Is it going to be as good as XY? I think better. You have better artworks. You have more secrets, more rares. You have, in some cases, more cards as well in the set. And then you have Trainer Gallery. I wanted to look at this very factually and ask myself, okay, what am I missing? Is my perception of investing in Pokemon skewed by the love that I have for Pokemon products and the game and how I enjoy with my kids? Am I mixing things? And when I look at this, I don't see the whole in my thought process. And again, I do sincerely encourage any of you to take a look at what I'm doing here, point out where my errors are, what I don't see, what I don't understand. I'll be the first one to say I'm wrong, and I would love to learn from you, but based on the numbers, and these are real sold, this, by the way, these numbers from eBay as well, these are not listing numbers, these are sold. This is what somebody actually paid for the products, okay? Let's go back further. Let's go back further. It only gets better. The more I scroll up, the better it gets. Now, I have less data the more I scroll up. It's where I'm kind of working my way from the bottom up, but take a look at these prices. Let's go back. Now we're talking 2012. Okay, we're talking 10 years ago, 10 years. Now that's a good number for me, at least, when we talk about what does that look like for an investment? What does 10 years look out when I invest in Apple stock or Microsoft stock or the S&P 500 or whatever it may be, crypto coins? What does it look like 10 years later? If we look at Pokemon, and thankfully we have almost 30 years of history to look at to say, how does that trend over time? Black and white. We're getting, let's go with just the black and white base set. Black and white base set was released on 4/25/2011. And again, maybe the MSRP was slightly off. I don't know. I can't find that data anywhere. It last sold on TCG Player this month, this year, $2,399. So you pay $99 and you get $2,300 back. 2,323% return. Took you 11 years. Sit on the product, hold it, don't open it, and you sell it in 10 years. Now, again, it depends on how much product you have. You have one case, you're not going to make that much. It's still nice money whenever you do decide to sell it later. But if you had $300,000 worth of inventory today, what would that be at 3,000% later? So let's take a look at one of the better ones, Dragons Exalted. Dragons Exalted came out again in August. Again, 2012 that is. And then we look at a $99 in MSRP as a generalization. Sold for $4,269.94. That's a $4,170 return, which is more than 4,000%, and it only took 10 years. You can't make this up. The numbers are amazing. Let's keep going back. Look, right here. Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Unleashed and Undaunted. $7,000 this month, this year. Almost a 7,000% increase in return. 12 years. So, and what you start to see very quickly, and you can kind of look at right where I'm at on this screen, and what you're going to see is you start to get a compounding effect every year that goes by, especially for the good sets. Every year that goes by, there's a compounding effect. And so you're not going, it doesn't take you another 10 years to reach 8,000%, for example. We start to hit 7,000% in just 2 years later. So it really is something to take into consideration. Let's keep going. And we have one here. We have Diamond and Pearl, 7,000%, 15 years, last sold for $6,339. And again, I'm assuming the booster box prices had to be cheaper than $99, 15 years ago. I'm pretty sure they were cheaper. Let's keep going. This is when it gets serious. Okay, let's go back 20 years. Let's go back 20 years. Neo Destiny. Now, again, maybe I have a first edition here or something that's off with my pricing. For sure, that may be the case, but the numbers are still good. Maybe it's not 18,000%. Maybe it's 15,000%. I don't know exactly because I'm still trying to dig through some of the data. So maybe I have a little bit of this off, but with only 8 secret cards in the set, nothing else. No other cards that were quote unquote special. you have an 18,000% return. Sold for $14,450, and you probably paid less than $100 for it. 20 years. Where's that in the stock market? What kind of gold and silver is going to give you that kind of return? Right? You buy a home and maybe you're in realty. You're going to make 18,000%? Probably not. So let's go all the way back to the very end. And we start to now hit things like Gem Heroes. And I think, I definitely know that one of these was a first edition because that's all the data I could find at that moment. Most of this came from TCG Player. I saw one on eBay, for example, here. But you get the idea. 16,000%, 10,000%, 15,000%, and we're just slightly over 20 years from 22 to 24. 21,000% for base set 2 in 22 years. It's basically 1,000% per year. You get 1,000% back per year. Now, is every set going to give you that kind of return? Of course not. Of course not. Will you lose money holding the product over 10 years? It doesn't look like it. Now, obviously, nothing's guaranteed. Maybe Pokemon, excuse me. Maybe Pokemon products go south and everybody stops buying it and stops seeing it as something valuable. I don't see that right now on the horizon, especially we're in a big boom right now, and I don't see that being the case, but it could happen. So obviously nothing's guaranteed. The stock market is not guaranteed. If you're here in the US, if you know anything about currency, the US dollar is not guaranteed. There is nothing that's guaranteed in this life. Nothing. But if you look at the facts and you look at what we have available to us right now, you know, we're not making uninformed decisions here. We're looking at almost 30 years of data, and it looks pretty good. Even battle styles can win in this kind of market. So when we think about investing in Pokemon and we think about, is that a right thing to do? What should I buy? When should I buy? And I've seen a lot lately about, oh, well, buying Evolving Skies at $300, you've already missed the window. Really? You missed the window at $300? Yes. Is it as cheap as the $99? Would you prefer to buy at $99? Of course. Of course. But if you didn't, buying and holding, obviously, one of the best sets in Sword and Shield at $300 is not missing out. That's still a bargain. You fast forward just 6 years later, and you start to see prices like this. $1,000, $1,800, $2,500. And I think Evolving Skies will be one of those higher end sets in Sword and Shield. So you fast forward and you will see a return that's, again, upwards of hundreds of percentages in your $300 per booster box price. One of the things that I'm also very open to is having an open conversation and debate with some of you. So if there is perspectives or you just want to get together and share ideas, feel free to reach out to us on our email found on our channel, and we're happy to schedule some meetings, and maybe even we could record those and share those with the community. So do reach out to us if you're interested. Now with this kind of information, you're wondering, well, how do I look at this? How do I plan to maybe do some personal investments for myself? What percentages might be a good percentage to think about to start with? So make sure you click on this video here, and we're going to dive into the next parts about financial investments with Pokemon and how you might consider to take your journey.